Thank you so much for joining us on the ABC 10 Plus TV streaming app. I'm Alex Bell, host of To the Point here on ABC 10. And over the next half hour, we're diving into some of President Trump's latest executive orders and their impact to us here in California. And we start tonight with the confusion over an attempt to overhaul federal spending. The White House put in place a sweeping freeze on potentially billions of dollars in federal grants and loans, possibly impacting millions of Americans, seniors, and children across the country. A federal judge temporarily blocking it after more than 20 states sued. The judge said, quote, "It seems like the federal government currently doesn't actually know the full scope of the programs that are going to be subject to the pause." Now, after that comment on Wednesday, the White House's budget office ended up rescinding a memo directing Trump's federal funding freeze. As for what the White House said this would have impacted, here's what was said.
What does this pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our federal bureaucracy and agencies.
The administration is adamant that programs that provide direct benefits to Americans like Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, and federal food assistance programs were not part of this order. But the broad directive caused confusion at much bigger programs like Medicaid, which provides health insurance for 72 million low-income Americans. States reported that the online portals were down, and Medicaid warned of possible payment delays due to executive orders regarding potentially unallowable grant payments. Now, in California, the nonpartisan group, the California Budget and Policy Center, says federal funding makes up 1/3 of California's budget. They estimate that to be about $153 billion, with about 75% of those funds going towards supporting health and human services. It is unclear what this order would have done to California. But joining us now, I want to go ahead and bring in our political insiders. We are joined by Democratic strategist Roger Salazar, who has worked under the Clinton administration, also Governor Gray Davis, and then we have Craig DeLuz also joining us tonight. Thank you for being here. He is currently the Director of Communications for the California Republican Assembly. So talking about this first, the federal funding freeze, and I'll start with you first, Craig. Why do you think the president signed this executive order? What's the goal here?
Well, the goal is to make sure that federal spending, number one, is not wasteful, but number two, is in line with the executive orders that he has put forth in a number of different areas, including dealing with the border crisis and illegal immigration, dealing with DEI, dealing with transgenderism, that agenda, all of those things. He wants to make sure that they're in line. And there are a number of different programs that DOGE has actually come up with and pointed to. A great example is there are 3 NGOs that had funding of about $500 million in 2019. Now they get almost $2 billion, and they're actually using that money in part to facilitate people coming across the border and teaching them how to come across the border and get access into the United States, circumventing U.S. law.
Roger, what are your thoughts? Why do you think the Trump administration is doing this?
Well, I think, again, this is all part for me. I look at it and I look at Trump as, this is all very performative for him. He wants to show that he's acting quickly, that that he's engaging right away. The problem with it is when you move as quickly as you can, especially when you're dealing with the federal government and all the federal funding programs that are out there. If you don't cross your T's and dot your I's, you're going to end up with a situation like this where they have to rescind it and take it back, because despite what the press secretary was saying yesterday, that this didn't have any impact on direct benefits to individuals, it was having an impact. People were worried about it. They were confused about it. Websites were down, and people were concerned about all this over a wide variety of different types of programs, and then they ended up having to rescind it. So, if you're going to be, you have to be a little bit more deliberate about these types of programs and these types of actions if you're going to take them. Otherwise, you end up with egg on your face like you did today.
Well, I think in part you also have to take into account how is it going to be interpreted, in particular by the media, which is not a friend of Donald Trump's, in particular by people who are running these programs, in many cases career bureaucrats who, once again, are not friends of Donald Trump. They're going to interpret it the worst possible way and communicate that out, and that's going to cause a hysteria. You have to take that into account so that you can appropriately respond.
Well, and I also think, though, again, that the memorandum was in black and white. What the press secretary and the spokespeople for the Trump administration want you to see is don't believe what you read, believe what we tell you. And again, that just adds to the confusion.
How important do you think is clear communication, especially with so much rolling out? Talk to me about that.
I think it's very important. Keep in mind that the memo that came out was from the Office of Budget Management. These are not people who were hired by Donald Trump. These are people who are leftovers from the last administration. And I say that to say this. They're not in the team. Not only are they not on the team, but they're not privy to everything that's going on. So yeah, probably it would have been better to slow down, make sure you have your people in there so that you know that the communication as it goes forth is going to be clear.
And Roger, I want to ask you, how does this action compare to previous administrations' approaches to federal funding and budgetary control? What are your thoughts?
Well, look, I think that every administration has the right to set their own priorities and set their own agenda and how they want to approach, spending. Again, there is the entire federal government was set up to be run slowly. That's the sad truth. It's not a ship that moves quickly. And when you try to move it quickly, you end up bumping into icebergs, and this is what happened here today. Again, I don't begrudge Donald Trump wanting to have his own priority set, but you got to do it the right way.
On Tuesday, we know that a federal judge temporarily blocked this order. What issues do you think the Trump administration is going to run into with signing this executive order?
Well, I think
what legal issues?
Well, I mean, in the end, I think what it's going to come down to is, does he have the authority? He may have in particular, to hold or reduce or restrict funds that have already been allocated by Congress.
Yeah, the impoundment.
Yes, exactly. So the question is going to be, how much authority does he actually have? Can he delay it? Can he withhold it? And I think that's the sort of thing we're going to see the courts decide on.
Yeah, and I do think that this is something that the Trump administration is doing, deliberately. They want to test those boundaries. They want to push the envelope. They want to get these things into courts because they believe, and the press secretary said it yesterday, they believe that it is constitutional for them to do this in this manner, this impoundment. So they're going to keep pushing that envelope as much as they possibly can.
And by the way, whether they win in court or not, they're going to be negotiating the whole time to try and expedite and get the thing through.
President Donald Trump continued his overhaul of the federal government by offering buyouts this week. The administration is offering nearly 2 million federal employees a buyout to resign as long as they do it by February 6th. In an email blasted to federal employees, those interested in taking the buyout were told to simply reply with one word: resign. The White House says, quote, American taxpayers pay for the salaries of federal government employees and therefore deserve employees working on their behalf who actually show up to work to our wonderful federal buildings, also paid for by taxpayers. Now, the union that represents 800,000 workers in the federal government, they are called the American Federation of Government Employees, also known as AFGE. They did release a statement that says, in part, quote, purging the federal government of dedicated career civil servants will have vast unintended consequences that will cause chaos for the Americans who depend on functioning federal government. I'll go ahead and start with you first. Was this a shock? Should we have seen this coming? What did you think when you first heard this? It was a bit of a surprise, but I think it's being done as a cost-saving measure. The goal here is this, and as a school board member, we've done this when we've needed to reduce costs. We've offered retirement incentives to our employees to encourage them to retire early so that we can reduce our budget as opposed to just laying employees off. In particular, if employees are not interested in implementing Donald Trump's agenda, or the president's agenda that has been put forth, it gives them an opportunity to retire. I mean, who knows? Maybe they're dealing with Trump derangement syndrome. Maybe they just have decided. Maybe they're already planning on their retirement. This is an incentive to get them to kind of step aside a little earlier so that the ball can get rolling sooner. So if they want a way out, this is their way out. If they want to take it, what are your thoughts? Yeah, and again, this to me is I had some experience working in the federal government as a political appointee, working with career civil servants, and one of the jokes that one of them came up with, I tried to ask somebody to do something once, and they said, "I'm not going to do that," and I said, "Well, you're below me on the hierarchy. You have to do it." He's like, "No. We're like NASA rockets. You can't fire us, and we never ever work." And so again, somebody said that to you. Somebody said that to me. It was the mindset of again. But that's I don't want to denigrate our federal employees. They're hardworking federal employees. But that was one particular individual. But again, I think the thing is here. Look, if I'm a federal employee and I've got Donald Trump offering me a buyout, you got to look at the guy's track record. This is a guy who has ducked bills from his contractors, from his employees, from his consultants. I wouldn't take his word
for it, by any stretch of the imagination. And I'd kind of stay where I am if I were them.
I would raise one. There is a legal question as to whether or not the amount would exceed the 20. There's supposed to be a $25,000 limitation. I'm not sure of all of the legal details, but it is something that's been raised, and anyone who decides to take advantage of it, it would be really sad if they took advantage of it and then found out that there was a maximum of $25,000.
I haven't heard of that, but I'll definitely look into that. I hadn't heard that.
Well, they
yet.
should look into it as well. I mean,
just look at what restrictions there could be. And that's with anything like that, though.
Yeah.
Look, Trump's the kind of guy who sit there and say, "Look, this microphone's not working. I'm not paying anybody for this rally." And there are cities out there who held rallies for Trump that are they're still waiting for their bills to get paid.
So Craig said that this is kind of like a cost-saving measure. What are your thoughts on why the administration is doing this?
Well, again, I think it goes back to trying to be as performative as we possibly can. They're making as big of a show as they possibly can to try to make as big a splash as they can, which is fine. But again, the impact. Again, there are programs all across this country that veterans depend on, that seniors depend on, that are run by a lot of these agencies. So you just have to make sure that if you're going to do it, you don't end up doing more harm than good. But I don't think Trump cares. I think his whole thing is about burning the whole thing down, and if people end up getting hurt, so be it. That's my opinion. I think he's all about trying to reduce people's comfort and impact and not comfort, reduce people's dependence on the government. Which again, that's his prerogative.
I do have one more question. Which federal agencies or departments do you think are going to be the most impacted by this?
Well, I think again, you already saw it if you combine the two items that we were talking about today, whether it's SNAP programs, Medicaid programs, Medicare programs, those are the veterans programs. Those are the ones that I think we ought to be concerned about.
I would disagree, only because, what you're going to see is there's already a certain amount that's going to be in fixed programs and fixed spending. Everything is largely going to wind up in the areas of discretional spending, and I don't see it affecting any of those major departments.
And a quick question before we move on, and I'll let you both answer it really quickly. Do you think the Trump administration is moving too fast, too soon, or is this all part of the plan?
I think it's all part of the plan.
I do think they're moving too fast, too soon, but I do think that's part of the plan.
Okay. And I do want to talk about immigration. Turning to the border now, Marines have been seen installing wire on the southern border, southern border wall in California. During his first week in office, President Trump signed 10 executive orders on immigration and issued a number of other directives to carry out promises of mass deportations and border security. The Trump administration is publicizing daily arrest numbers, but not saying how many have committed violent crimes. We know that out in New York, there were heavily armed agents seen moving into an apartment in the Bronx. Their target was a 25-year-old man said to be a Venezuelan gang member wanted in connection with a home invasion and kidnapping out in Colorado. Nearly 3 dozen were arrested in the New York City operation. Authorities say that they are targeting violent criminals, but acknowledge other immigrants will likely be swept up too. Now, on Tuesday, during the first White House press briefing, there was some back and forth between the press and press secretary Caroline Leavitt on who the Trump administration was focusing on deporting first. Go ahead and take a listen.
Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
You made a point of going with the worst first. They all have a criminal record?
And welcome to the briefing
If they
room.
broke our nation's laws, yes, they are criminal.
This week, San Francisco leaders defended their sanctuary city policies in a rally outside City Hall, and it comes as fear is growing in migrant communities. Some are sheltering at home, too scared to go to work or to take their kids to school. California is a sanctuary state, meaning local law enforcement is prohibited in assisting ICE with few exceptions. Roger, I want to start with you. What are your thoughts on the administration's immigration actions so far?
Yeah, and again, you sort of heard it there. There was one thing that was said during the campaign, and another thing that was said, just in this last press briefing. During the campaign, and I think we talked about it here on this program. We're only going to focus. We're going to start our focus on the violent criminals and take those folks out. And now you hear the press secretary saying, well, they're all criminals, so we're focusing on all of them right now. So again, that is very much different from what they were talking about during the campaign. And again, my concern is this. The numbers during that first week were very similar to the numbers of deportations under Joe Biden. They weren't that much. They weren't that much higher. I think what you saw as the week sort of worked its way on, that they started doing quota programs for the Border Patrol agents to try and get and increase those number of arrests during those sweeps. And what's then going to end up happening is you're going to have legal citizens, legal immigrants, get caught up in it. We had one in New Jersey, I believe, who was a veteran, whose documents were, they were accusing him of falsifying his documents, or were questioning his credentials. So you're going to end up getting a lot of people who are not illegal immigrants, who are not violent immigrants, who are going to get caught up in this and get deported. We saw this happen, in the 1930s, where you had legal citizens, American citizens, get deported out of this country, and I worry that because of these types of quota programs, because they're not getting the results that they wanted in the first week, that's going to increase, and we're going to end up getting people who shouldn't be kicked out of our country.
Oh. Craig, what are your thoughts?
I don't know that they're not getting I don't know that they're not getting the numbers they want. I mean, they have documented at least 5,700 of those who have been detained are violent criminals, meaning they've committed violent crimes here in the United States. It was a bit of a verbal faux pas for the press secretary to not clarify. First of all, there are four different groups of people we're talking about. We're talking about citizens. We're talking about legal residents, or people who are maybe not citizens but who are here legally. We're also talking about people who entered the country illegally. If you violate our border laws, our immigration laws, in order to enter into this country, technically, because you've committed a crime, you are a criminal. Now, what she should have also clarified was there are also people who've committed crimes since they've been here, both violent and nonviolent. The target, the folks that they are targeting are those who've committed violent crimes. They're the first ones that they're going after. But what they've made very clear is that as they're targeting those individuals, if they come across individuals who are here in the country illegally, they will likely be detained as well.
And not worry about the legal citizens or the veterans who are get caught up in it as well. They're just collateral damage, I guess.
No, I'm saying that they're going to detain those who are in the country illegally.
Yeah, but again, like my concern is over those folks who are here, who are legal, whether they're residents, whether they're whether they're in the process, or they're actual citizens. They get. So that's my concern. Mm-hmm. And again, when you have these types of quotas for these Border Patrol agents, and they got to meet their quotas, they're just going to pick up whoever they can.
I have to admit, I haven't heard anything about quotas, but there is one quota that I do know about, and that is over 2 million. People coming across our southern border every year. We're talking about 10 million total during the Biden administration. The problem that created, the reality is that what you've got is the Biden administration made this huge mess. And now the Trump administration is coming in to try and fix it. They're trying to come in and they're trying to clean it up. And because they're making a bunch of dust, now they want to complain about the dust being made about the Trump administration.
I do want to ask you, how do you think the Trump administration handling, immigration right now, how do you think it's being received by the American people?
85% of Americans said they wanted to see violent criminals removed from the country. Over 60% said they wanted to see those who are in the country illegally, regardless of the distant amount of time they've been in the country. They wanted to see them dealt with. I think that as time goes on, right now, what should be happening is there ought to be communications about once we get those who've committed crimes, violent and nonviolent crimes here in the United States, those who should never have been allowed into the United States. How do we then handle those who are left after that? Because this is going to be a long process. This is going to be going on for a while.
And in the meantime, what we've got is a lot of theater. A lot of this kabuki. You saw it with the Colombian, the military transport of deportees back to Colombia. The Colombian government said, we don't want our guys back here shackled on military planes. Treat them right. Trump said, I'm going to slap some sanctions on you. The Colombians said, do what you got to do. Finally, the Trump administration put them on regular planes and brought them back, and now everybody sort of seemed to win.
Yeah, so that's what you're seeing right now is video from exactly what Roger was talking about. What he's talking about is just last weekend.
Let's keep in mind, these are individuals who are criminal migrants, meaning they committed crimes while they were here. That's one of the reasons why they were in shackles. And Donald Trump did that because He did as
he
he's
wants to
doing
put on
with
a good
all.
show.
Yeah, he's doing it as he's done with all of his foreign policy. Yeah, it's FAFO, F around and find out.
Thank you for not saying the real word. Real word. But yes, just to give clarity to our viewers back home, what Roger was talking about is, the Trump administration, they did clash with Colombia over accepting flights of deported migrants from the U.S. back to Colombia. If the country didn't take them back, then he threatened steep tariffs, other sanctions as well. Within a few hours, as we know, Colombia changed course and decided to cooperate with the Trump administration to receive those flights. So let me ask you, with all that being said, do you think that we'll see more countries respond to the Trump administration the same way that Colombia did?
I think you will, and I think at a certain point, Trump is going to be required to follow through on the threats that he makes. But in essence, he's going to respond to each and every one. I mean, Donald Trump basically what he's doing in down. If you ever played spades, when he sits down to negotiate, he's got both the high joker, the low joker, and 2/3 of the trump cards.
Yeah.
Joke intended.
No, absolutely. No, I agree.
I mean, like people, other countries are going to respond the same way that Colombia did.
Well, you saw what Colombia did again, and it's interesting to me because again, the politics is theater, and what we saw with the situation with Colombia is both sides, puffed out their chests. Colombia's president did it so that his country could see him puffing out his chest. Trump puffed out his chest, or our country could see it. They both ended up backing down and both declared victory. Right. So it's just weird.
But let me ask you, how do you think these immigration, reforms, regulations, changes with this new administration, how do you think that they're going to impact relationships?
Oh, and Craig has a point about the way Donald Trump negotiates. He negotiates from the seat of his pants, and he's also just going to dive right into the middle of these things. There's going to be tough. There's going to be tough feelings on all sides. Whether it's Mexico, whether it's any of our neighbors to the south, whether it's Canada, whether it's Denmark and Greenland, our European allies. They're all going to be rubbed raw by Trump. Now Trump's going to do everything he can, just like he's doing with illegal things that we were talking about earlier. He's going to push that envelope, see how far he can take these guys before going over the edge. So I see more of this. I see a lot of hurt feelings. But ultimately, I see everybody at the end of the day declaring victory for each other. It's just going to be a lot of the same stuff.
And Craig, before we go, I want to hear your thoughts as well. What do you think? How do you think this is going to impact relationships?
I think this, just like with everything else that he deals with when it comes to foreign policy, it's going to be America first. Not America only, but America first. The previous administration put the needs of the entire world, of the global community, and the values of the global community over that of our own people and our own citizens. And I think that as we look at everything, whether it's military conflicts, whether it's foreign aid, or in this case, immigration, he's going to look at what's best for the American people first and foremost.
I just think to say that any administration doesn't think first and foremost of the American people is ridiculous.
Well, as always, thank you both so much for joining us. We appreciate all the insight that you bring to our show, so thank you very much. And To the Point does not end here. Just so you know, you can always watch stories that are featured on our show. All you have to do is download our free ABC 10 Plus app wherever you stream. We'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Alex Bell. Join me weeknights at 6:30 on To the Point. Instead of just reporting on the problems, we cut through the noise and look for solutions. We're not afraid to investigate local stories. We're not afraid to include different perspectives. We're not afraid to hold those in power accountable. This is your community, and it's my community too. And we're here to make it better for everyone. Join me, Alex Bell, on To the Point, weeknights at 6:30, only on ABC 10.
Thanks for watching ABC 10 Plus. And now that you're here, why don't we take a look around and see what else is here? The very first tile on your left is always going to be streaming 24/7. You can find us adjacent to that, breaking news if it's there. And then right next to that, a replay of the most recent newscast. Whether it's ABC 10 Morning News at 5, 6, or beyond, it's going to be there. The forecast beyond that, and then right beyond that, the news that matters the most. Now that you know the basic tiles, let's go up to the top and take a deeper dive into news. We have every single newscast that you would need, including To the Point with Alex Bell, taking a deeper dive into the issues. Beyond that, ABC 10 Morning News at 5 and 6 and 11, the evening shows as well. Below that, you can watch the top stories from To the Point. Under that, Dollars and Cents, where you can learn how to navigate this challenging economy. And below that, you can watch our award-winning ABC 10 Special Investigations, where we hold the powerful accountable. Going into weather, Look, it's the 10-day forecast, getting you ready for the weekend and beyond. Beyond that, sports. I know you care about the Sacramento Kings. We have the most comprehensive guide to anything, everything Kings in the locker room and on the court. We have it. Below that, I know you care about the San Francisco 49ers. We can't mention Bay Sports without talking about the Oakland A's. We have that too. Backing out again, come up to the top and join me on Verify. I'm super excited about this. Our experts are checking the facts, verifying the truth for you. Jump up now to shows. Very excited about this. Oh, look. It's Take a Look. This is my show. I love movies, and if you love movies or streaming shows, whether it's on screens this big, or this big, it's Take a Look. Recently went behind the scenes, sat down with Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix to talk about Joker 2. I love the movie, and oh, I just heard you shout you hate the movie. Jump in, we talk about it on this show. Other shows, Bartell's Backroads, go up and down the state of California, tank of gas getaways, one fuel cell getaway, like places like the Toy Museum. This is what kids did before they had screens. Over here, the Moaning Caverns of Calaveras County, one of the most coveted caves in all of California. You know, watching this show, I discovered there's a cave that could fit the entire Statue of Liberty in your own backyard. You'll find about that and more with Bartell's Backroads. Down below that, To the Point. It is one of my favorite newscasts because they talk about news with Alex Bell the way you talk about news. It's conversational but in-depth at the same time. Below that, Your California Life. Love this show. Whether it's entertainment, food, beverage, lifestyle, it's there. Desiree Shepherd hosts and does an amazing job. So there you have it. It's ABC 10 Plus, the app. What do you need? We heard you and we got it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for streaming.
Hi, I'm Alex Bell. Join me weeknights at 6:30 on To the Point. Instead of just reporting on the problems, we cut through the noise and look for solutions. We're not afraid to investigate local stories. We're not afraid to include different perspectives. We're not afraid to hold those in power accountable. This is your community, and it's my community too, and we're here to make it better for everyone. Join me, Alex Bell, on To the Point, weeknights at 6:30, only on ABC 10.